Hello, I am the darkness, and I am glad you're here. However, your day went, I hope it went well. This is another one of those Topic Tuesdays that I'm getting set up or trying to get myself into a better rhythm of doing. It's a little adjustment on my part, but it's something that I genuinely feel that I like doing. So, again, if you like the videos, if you're enjoying them, comment, leave your darkness, whatever the case is. Um, but hopefully it's something that you enjoy. I find a lot of these things that I'm doing are not into, they're not meant to kind of give people this idea, this is how it's supposed to be or whatever. This is just my opinion of things. This is what I feel is, I guess, important to a certain degree, enough for me to put, things like this out, but it's not something where I'm, trying to sway or make an argument about something. It's just my opinion. Now, if you feel the same, if you share similar feelings, that's great. If not, maybe it's just something for you to look at and go, something to consider. And if not, then the reality, I'm not really sure what you're watching this for. But this one is something that I've done about, multiple times. It's revolving around awards ceremonies or televised awards of any type, whether it be for video games or for TV or movies or music or any of that stuff. I think it's a kind of a waste to get involved with that type of stuff. To look as those as if to look at those awards as if they're some kind of true valued measuring stick, something that you can kind of use as like an argument as to why something is better versus not. It's the same. It's like saying that you only like these movies because they're nominated or because they've won awards, and it's like at a certain point you're trying to validate the reason why you like whatever it is. Again, it could be games, movies, music, doesn't matter, but you're using that as your flag to say, well, your thing may not have nominations or whatever, but my thing does. And I just feel like it's truly a waste of time. I'm sure there's other elements to it where people are putting the stage together and the sound and all this other stuff, and I'm sure that's important for the workforce element to it. But the whole idea of it seems kind of wasteful, seems kind of stupid, for lack of a better term. You're basically taking a bunch of projects or different types of works and then reducing them to these categories that you put together to kind of, and especially when you only have like four or five options. So you're reducing the nominees to a category, which is then excluding the options that could have been considered to, as especially by in a general sense, could have been considered positive or just well received, but they're not in that category because of whatever reason. Um, so you now have creating you're creating a measuring stick, but you're not being as truthful about the what's being measured. You're able to kind of create this sense of, oh well, because it fits in this category, there's only so many spots you can have, and it just seems kind of unnecessary to put things in that nature. Now, sure, you can make the argument that some of these things do fit as like the best CD or the best artist or whatever, or the best game, or but it then creates like this weird precedent. So now the next person who makes a game is going to look at these as like, oh well, these won awards, so I want to try to base mine off that. And then you have this kind of false idea of like making a game not for the enjoyment of just the populace who find it, but now you're trying to attain some kind of award, or maybe you weren't trying to win an award, and then you get nominated for it, and it's like, well, I can't reject it, but if that's not your intention, then you wouldn't need to have the award. There's no. It's not like getting that status of being a nominee or winning the award is going to mean that it's somehow better than the options that were never nominated or weren't considered or never won an award. Because again, it's like that thing when the joke that was always around with Leonardo DiCaprio. He never won an Emmy or whatever, and finally he wins one, and it's like, oh, okay, great. But it doesn't mean that the other movies that he didn't get weren't still, I guess fantastic or enjoyable, or whatever you want to use to describe those movies. Um, so it's kind of like unnecessary. You can say, oh, well, they're being recognized for their talent, and da, 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 da. But not really, because again, it's something where if the movie is never nominated, but people enjoy the movie, does that mean it's not still successful to a certain degree, or that it's not still well liked by the people who watched it? And of course, with everything, there's always going to be those, as they call them, haters, or people who just don't like the movie or whatever. They think it's not up to par with something they've created. Apparently, that's why I've never really had that opinion of like, I don't like, oh, this movie is terrible or whatever. It's like, if I don't like the movie, it's just because it's not my type of movie. But I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, this movie sucks, this movie needs, or whatever. um, you can have an opinion, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's when you have this like definitive stance of like, this movie is better or this game is better because of this. It's like, well, I don't think you're looking at it as objectively. You're looking at it from like a personal, a personal side, which is not how you would, you wouldn't want an award based off of personality. It just seems kind of uh, heavily influenced by the people who are, on that judge panel. Maybe they like you, maybe you treated them well or whatever. So you're kind of feeding into their like ego, when it's like the thing was supposed to be, given to the people, essentially. So winning the award in the category is not really creating this new example of what makes a good game or movie. It's not like you're gonna win some award for like, best music or best set design or best costume or whatever, and then going forward for the rest of the year, everyone's going to be like, oh, well, these people won the award, so we have to do it like this, or we should kind of, base our options off of these past winners, because if we want to win, then we want to do something that's similar to them. Obviously, you follow the paths of success, and you should be able to replicate it, essentially. Um, but it just seems silly to have these awards, to have these like statuses given to these games and movies, and music of any kind, and kind of make it seem as though like anybody who decides to go against that or not follow that path is somehow going to be perceived as like, not, I don't want to say inferior, but as if they're not, able to do anything that's as good. Because again, if you're going to do that, if you do end up creating this, if in a sense, if you are creating this kind of idea where the these are the options, or these are the candidates for what you want to base your future project on. Now you're not now it's not a unique, like, it's not a unique project anymore, because now you have people who are replicating it. When you have like you're basically copying the homework but changing the name. So it's not as unique, and no matter how many deviations you are derivative of the original plot or the original movie, but you're like, oh, well, this time it's in a different setting, or it's in the stance of, or it's in the perspective of the other now it's like, well, you're just kind of grasping at straws, and it's like that kind of, I feel like in a sense it kind of removes the creativity of future projects. Now you're basing it as like, well, we did this and we wanted to do this, but there was a game that was similar to what we're trying to do and they didn't win any awards, but these ones did, and we can just change some things to win it that way. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like the awards are kind of a scam in a sense, because you're creating this idea of, well, what's considered good, what's considered not as good, and now you have people who might be coming up with ideas and thinking, oh, well, I got inspiration from such and such, and this movie or this game, and I, after the awards and after the several different awards that they hold for whatever category, It didn't win. It was in multiple, it was nominated, or it was only nominated a few times, but the other competitors were nominated more. There's layers to it, but I'm saying like the idea of the awards just kind of creates this kind of weird pocket of this is what it means to be successful, quote unquote. But if you go against it or don't strive to be like them, you may not be as successful. But if there were no awards, we wouldn't really need it. It would just be based off of like the public perception. You would have people who are speaking of, word of mouth, or who are discussing it amongst each other, or hear other people talking about it and say, "Oh, I saw that movie," or I didn't like it," whatever. Online forums, I guess. I mean, you could use that as well, but that's still a sense of opinion. And that's really what I'm saying, is that like the awards are just basically like a certain group of people's opinion based off of their own interaction with the game, other people who are voting potentially, if they're, what I mean? It's not like it's a massive vote of fans and stuff like that are sending in, text this number and text 1, 2, or 3. It's not like that. So, you're also creating categories that are only going to fit certain projects, over different criteria, but then they may fit other aspects that make them clear winners if they're compared to other options. So like, in terms of gaming, Zelda may have the Breath of the Wild has a great open world and has a lot of different features that you can, and different mechanics in the game that are very unique. Although yes, there are other games that do share that same feeling, or that same, setting, design, whatever the case. But it's still unique because it's Zelda, because of the characters, because of like the history of it. And then you have a game like Elden Ring, which has very similar in the sense it's an open world. There's a lot of different mechanics. There's different character design. The settings and everything about the game is very unique. There's not a lot of games that are like that, but they're still open world. So you can put those two in the same category, but clearly they're two very different games. Zelda is made for like, and everyone can play it, they can still enjoy it, but it's like, I don't want to say kiddie, it's for like children and stuff, but the look of it and everything is kind of meant to be something that's, especially because it's from Nintendo, it's meant to look something that's very childish, very cartoony. But Elden Ring is something where you have to take it seriously because of the way that you play the game, because of the aspects of the characters and how you fight enemies and the weapons you acquire, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's unfortunate that even though with the awards that are there, you still have these kind of, you see the awards and you see the nominations. You kind of see it and you're like, there's no way that this other, this one isn't going to win, or this one wouldn't win. I feel like if you're going to do the awards, maybe do it amongst the companies, like what was the best thing Bethesda made, or what was the best thing about Bethesda, or Ubisoft, or whatever. I know that kind of seems a little bit difficult because they only make like a game or two coming out every year, depending on the company. But that's what I'm saying. It's just an example. I mean, overall, I don't think the awards are necessary. I think you're kind of doing it for people have something to watch, for people to have this kind of weird debate over. You're creating like a division in a sense, because now you have people who are saying, "Oh, they shouldn't have won this," or "How could this have won?" Or "Of course this won. It should have won everything." Blah blah blah. And it's like, well, no. Like, if the game is accepted, then the game is accepted. Or if the movie is, found to be great, then it's great. If people don't like it, that's also okay too. There's nothing problematic about it. But when you're making these categories and you're utilizing these, the awards to kind of give people this idea of, well, this is what it means to be a good game or a good movie, and if you want to be recognized by the peers or by future observers, this is what you need to do. And you're kind of creating this weird pressure system on the winners to retain that success by not replicating what they've done, but essentially if it's not broke, don't fix it. So now it's like, well, okay, so we figured out how to win awards. Now we can just keep doing that, because if we win the awards, then we can use that as a marketing to say that, we're successful at making these things, and that'll get people to buy our games more because we don't miss. And it's like, if the awards weren't there, you would have to do it by your own like merit. It would have to be by the actual, the fans, the people who know of the game or know these other things. Like, I'm sure there were awards back in the 90s and stuff with like, Mario 64 and Donkey Kong 64 and all the other like games that we had coming out at that time. But Mario 64 has kind of pushed, I guess, past the 90s and stuff, and people still talk about those games. Although Mario is a very unique example because it's across different games overall. I think it's just kind of unfortunate because then weird you have these weird things where you have games that you want it to be like, oh, well, that's an old game, it has old pixels, da 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 da, but you have newer games that are more refined, more crisp in design, and yet they're still boring. So it's something kind of weird, in my opinion, when we have the awards, especially for video games, but in general, when you have awards, you're creating this idea that these are the games that you should play. All the other games that weren't nominated or not, don't play them, because this is, we've decided as a group of people that these are what we consider to be the best in the past year, and you'd be crazy not to play them. And it's like, and I mean, sure, not really though. And that's what I'm saying, is like the awards kind of create this weird world where you have to play these games, or it's better for you to play these games than the other ones. And that's why I'm saying the awards kind of, you eliminate the other options that are possible for people to enjoy because they weren't nominated or they weren't considered, or whatever. So this is something that I've thought about multiple times. I don't really watch the awards that often because, like, whenever I see it, if I'm on Hulu or something and it says, it has like the main the first thing you see when you open up the app is like, oh, click, watch live the 75th anniversary or 75th Emmys or whatever. It's kind of like, well, I don't really want to watch it. Now again, that's just my opinion, but I feel like the people who do watch it are kind of feeding into that, because then they're using that as like a flag to say, oh, my favorite movie won, or whatever. And it's like, but is it because it won an award or because it was nominated? Did you not like the movie before there was any consideration for for being nominated? Like, if the movie you saw in the theaters, or maybe it was who you saw it with, or the moment that you cherish, whatever, and the movie doesn't get nominated, does that mean that it's no longer as enjoyable? I don't know. I don't really think so. I think you would still enjoy the movie, even if there was no consideration of a nomination at all. So I think it's unfortunate that is being used as a way to define a successful movie or a game or music, an album or whatever. Whereas if you enjoyed it, that's fine. That's great for you. You can speak to other people about it. You can speak your opinion about it and stuff like that. But when you have this, well, how can you like this? This didn't even win an award. Now the argument isn't even, there's no real argument to be had. Now you're creating this weird thing where people have this as their, like, even if you try to go at it from a logistics standpoint, you still have this, they have that in their back pocket of like, well, this won an award, or it was nominated, so, and it had this person in it, or these people were singing on it, or or whatever. Voice acting was the blah, whatever the case. You understand what I'm getting at. But overall, this is just kind of this is a this is more referencing the theme of these types of videos. I just want to do something that kind of touches on something. Again, I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. I'm not trying to sway you. I'm just pointing out that this is what I've noticed. That's, at least in part of our society, and it's something that has come up in my just thinking throughout the days. So again, if you feel the same, that's great. Share, leave your comments. Speak your truth if you would. If you don't feel the same, you can tell me that as well. Oh, well, I like them for whatever. At the end of the day, it's just an opinion. I'm probably still never going to be one of those people who watches the awards. I mean, gaming awards, sure, but even then, it's just like, what's the point? To see the new stuff that might be coming out, okay. I mean, I guess the trailer's going to come out eventually, so it's not, it's not like it's going to be something that I'm going to be missing. Um, but regardless, I think it's something that is a waste of time. But awards, I guess, are useful so that you can kind of have those moments of recognition. But I truly think that if you want to, at least if you want to have this level of recognition, it would be the fans. It would be the people who enjoyed it. That would be the loudest, not a group of people who are sitting in a room going, okay, well, there was this many stuff, and they propose their project or their whatever as something as a candidate, and we're considering it, but it was based on the reviews, and now you're kind of nitpicking what you think is going to be best, and then I'm sure there's elements of like viewership and who's going to be watching, and if we don't put these, and people, again, it just seems like a waste of time. But at the same time, this is my opinion. I'm like I said, I'm probably never going to watch the awards, stuff like that, where I'm like having people over, or getting my making sure I'm there and watching it from the start. It's nothing like that. So again, this is just my own opinion of things. I think awards are kind of silly. I understand why people have them, or why we have them as something to watch, but I think at the end it kind of creates this unfortunate circumstance for those who are not nominated, or not considered to be like viewed as less than, when they're just as equally good, I'm sure, to some people, if not the people who at least watched it and can say they enjoyed it, but it wasn't nominated. So that's my little ramble for this. This was entertaining, but I have other things that I want to talk about later on, but this is just kind of getting me into the motion of doing these things. So again, if you like it, if you want to comment, share your stories, share your opinions about this topic, that's fine. Um, but other than that, I hope everything is well, and I will catch you next time.